Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen, Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una, wanfa'na bima tu'allimuna, wa zidna bifadlika ilman wa ta'liman, innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. So, ina al-fiddah, container silver containers. It says, قال أبو حنيفة يجوز المطعم بكثير الفضة. Something in which there is a lot of gold. There's not a silver container, but it has a lot of silver on it. It is permissible to use as a utensil or to eat from. قال الشافعي يكره إن احتيج إليه وإلا يحرم. So in the Shafi'i school, we say it is makruh to use it if it has a lot. So here he's saying قال الشافعي يكره. He doesn't mention if it's a lot or a little. So in the Shafi'i school, if it is a little and there's a need, it's permissible. And if there's a lot and there's no need, it is haram. But if there's a lot and there's a need, or there's a little and there's no need, then it is makruh. Right? So notice here then, key concept. If this is how you studied fiqh, so imagine if this is how you studied fiqh, was you just did a comparative fiqh class like this, where you're not actually studying Shafi fiqh, you're just studying quotes from Shafi fiqh or Hanafi fiqh. Is this the Mufta bihi? Is this Shafi school? It's not. Is this actually Hanafi school? Maybe, maybe not. Right. So we understand that fiqh is taken from a fiqh book. So it doesn't mention what the Hanbali school is. Aslan. Not sure what it is. Anyway, so it says Lana. What does so for us, for our opinion, is ما خرج الدارقطني في كتابه في السنن. So in the Sunan of Daraqutni specifically, it seems that he is specifically interested in quoting a hadith that the Hanafis use but are actually too weak to be a proof, right? So if you saw a hadith in Abu Dawood is specifically saying that his hadiths, unless they're very weak, they are salih, they're acceptable. That's not the manhaj of Daraqutni, wallahu alam. So he will specifically mention a hadith because he's late, right? He's in the 4th century, and some late Hanafi has used this hadith as a proof, and he's saying this is not a proof at all, right? And so it's important to understand what late scholars may or may not use as a proof, may or may not. So what a late scholar may use as a proof may or may not be the actual proof of the school. It's important to understand that, right? So, and that's even applies to the Shafi school. Even applies to the Shafi school. Okay, so he says لنا ما خرج الدارقطني في كتابه أي السنن حدثنا الفاكهي قال أنبأنا ابن أبي مسرة قال حدثنا يحيى بن محمد الجاري قال حدثنا زكريا بن إبراهيم بن عبد الله بن مطيع عن أبيه عن ابن عمر أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من شرب في إناء ذهب أو فضة أو إناء فيه شيء من ذلك فإنما يجرجر في بطنه نار جهنم. Right, he's pouring hellfire into his own stomach. So notice it says, "Oh, ina'in fihi shay'un min dhalik." Right, that's the point that he's mentioning here. Then he says, قلت أي إمام الذهبي الجاري ليس بعمدة ولا أدري من شيخه. Right, it says here, الجاري with a shadda, الجاري. So this person, Yahya ibn Muhammad al-Jari, laysa bil umda, he's not reliable. And he says his Sheikh, Zakaria ibn Ibrahim ibn Abdullah ibn Muti', never heard of him. Right, so it's basically not a hadith at all. And he also narrates Um, Imam Ahmad narrates with his so حدثنا محمد بن عبيد قال حدثنا داود الأودي عن شهر بن حوشب عن أسماء بنت يزيد قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يصلح من الذهب شيء ولا خرب صيصة. قلت هي الخرب صيصة الحقير الحلي. وداود this داود هي الداودي ضعيف. وهي الهنا التي تتراءى في الرمل لها بصيص كأنها عين جرادة. بصيصة. And so he says in the Musnad it has basisa, not kharbsisa. Where were we? So here he's not really mentioning the key evidence. I'm not sure why. Because there's a well-known hadith from Sayyidina Anas that Sayyidina Anas um, had the goblet of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it had been fixed with a small amount of gold, of silver. So that's a proof for Imam Hanifa. So he says, well, clearly the Prophet ﷺ had silver in his container, therefore silver is halal, a lot or a little, right? Imam Shafi saying, well, assuming that was for a need and it's a small amount, right? Um, so it's kind of proof of both. I'm not sure why he doesn't mention that hadith here. Allahu alam. Let's just skip to Bulugh al-Maram. So Bulugh al-Maram, we mentioned the difference before, and Bulugh al-Maram does not mention the madhahib. Where is Bulugh al-Maram? Why I can't type. Mm, okay. Okay, so it mentions that hadith. Right, number one, that mentions that hadith that's in Bukhari and Muslim. A similar hadith that he mentioned right now, but it's haram. This is the hadith he just mentioned right now. Oh, he doesn't mention any other thing. Interesting. Doesn't mention the other hadith about Sayyidina Anas. Hmm. Interesting. Oh, here we go. Here we go. عن أنس رضي الله عنه قدح النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم انكسر فاتخذ مكان الشعب بسلسلة من فضة. This hadith here. أخرجه البخاري. Okay, that's the hadith there. Right. So there was a. So that's the proof for Imam. That was another thing here. Right. So see the tartib here, there's no chain of transmission, but just odd that Imam al-Dhahabi did not mention this hadith, or Imam Ibn al-Jawzi as well didn't mention this hadith, because it seems pretty important to the topic. Wallahu a'lam. That hadith should be there. Right, so it's a good idea to have Bulugh al-Maram next to you as we go along. So again, Bulugh al-Maram, they're both mukhtasarat, right? So whenever anybody does a mukhtasar, you've got to cut things out. You have to cut things out. So that's why we're looking at a book. We're not looking at everything because it's impossible to study everything. So Bulugh al-Maram cuts out, doesn't mention the different madhahib, doesn't mention the madar of the hadith, just mentions the source. But it's nice to see the madar of the hadith. It's nice to see the position of the madhahib as well, right? Khair. Okay. So then he says, مسألة لا يجوز استقبال القبلة والاستدبار للحاجة وفي البنيان رواية. Okay, what about in a building? What about in a place where there's a wall in front of you? He says, منع أبو حنيفة مطلقا, right? And I believe this is the Hanafi school. Even if you have a bathroom, you're in a bathroom, the bathroom is built facing the Qibla, you can't do that. وأجاز داود مطلقا, and Dawood al-Zahiri says it's permissible 100%. So it's very important that Dawood al-Zahiri, the Zahiris, right? Dawood al-Zahiri is a huge scholar, right? He's a huge, huge scholar. He's not a fool. The issue is, and this is a concept that we've spoken about in depth, and we spoke about it in the course on pluralism. Not pluralism, on what's it called? The development of the madhahib and orthodoxy in Islam, is that what's relevant is not just the genius of individuals, but the cumulative effect of the intelligentsia in general. So look at the cumulative contribution of the Zahiris in general. What is it? Very little. So Dawood al-Zahiri comes along, invents Zahiriism. Who came after him? One person, two people, three people, a movement, but a very, very small movement. Very small movement. So he will be quoted by early scholars here and there. It is of some relevance. The kind of fair approach to them is that if they have an opinion, if Dawood al-Zahiri, for example, says something that does not go against al-Qiyas al-Jali, does not go against clear and obvious analogy, then his position is relevant. It can be used in principle. But if it goes against clear analogy, then it's just to be ignored, right? But it's worth that they do quote it Bidayat al-Mujtahid as well, right? They'll quote the Zahiris, it does exist. Right? Okay, وفي الصحيحين للزهري. So notice there, he's cutting out Bukhari, he's cutting out the Sheikh of Bukhari, and he's cutting out the Sheikh of Bukhari, and jumping to the Madar. That's why it's interesting to see this, right? So الزهري عن عطاء بن يزيد سمع أبا أيوب الأنصاري يحدث عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال لا تستقبلوا القبلة بغائط وبول ولا بول ولكن شرقوا أو غربوا. Right, we mentioned in other classes that this is a proof used by Al-Muhib al-Tabari in his Ghayat al-Ihkam fi Ahadith al-Ahkam, which is a very unique book and has been recently published, I believe, by republished. It's been published in various forms, I believe, by Dar al-Fath, unless I'm mistaken. that this is a proof that what we're talking about when we're talking about qibla, we're talking about the jiha, the general direction, right, as opposed to the exact direction. وفي مسلم لسهيل, presumably this is Suhail ibn Abi Salih, عن القعقاع عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إذا جلس أحدكم على حاجته فلا يستقبل القبلة ولا يستدبرها. Okay, so far it's mutlaqan, right? Don't face the qibla, right? And the qiyas as well from the Hanafis is that if you cannot face the qibla while defecating or urinating, then you also cannot show your awra to the qibla. You can't face the qibla with your awra, naked, for example. فَحَمَلْنَاهُ عَلَى الصَّحْرَاءِ. Why? Why is it specifically in an open area where there's nothing in front of you? لأجل حديث محمد بن يحيى بن حبان عن عمه واسع عن ابن عمر. Right? He's giving us the madar. قال رقيت. Right. رقي يرقى, to go up. يوما على بيت حفصة فرأيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم على حاجته مستقبل الشام مستدبر الكعبة. Right. He was facing direction of Sham and he's with his back to the Kaaba. Okay. And there's also an ish'ar that it's a general direction, right? I mean, to what extent, how accurate is that? You're facing Sham. That's a general direction. That's not a point, is it? So he mustadbir al-Ka'bati, with his back towards the Kaaba. So this is going to be in Medina. How is that? I'm just trying to think, how is that possible? The map of Medina. So, oh, I see. Yeah, so if you think about it, look at this map. So if you were in Medina, I'm going to share this screen here right now. If you're in Medina and you're facing the Kaaba, you are basically facing the desert here. Okay? So if you draw a line from here to here, you're facing this. So Jerusalem's here. So that's not the same direction, is it? So notice I'm just trying to just talk about the concept of the general direction. In Ibn Umar's mind, he is facing the Kaaba, okay? And he has his back to this area. I don't think when he says Sham, he's referring to this part of Jordan, is he? Right? He's talking about this. This is Sham. Okay, this is Sham here. So he's thinking about this as a direction and this as a direction. It's not actually in a line. But yet in his mind, he conceives of he's facing one thing with his back to something else, i.e. it's not exact. Wallahu alam. This is just my mujtahid mutlaq thinking, right? And you get this sense here that they're not really talking about an exact thing. It's more like roughly, right? Because it's not really in a line. So either his back was to this area, in which case he's facing this general area. He's right. So the Kaaba is here, 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 etc. Right? This is considered the Kaaba for them. Right? Wallahu a'lam. Does that make sense? وأخرجه الستة من حديث جماعته وفي الباب عن أبي قتادة وعمار بن ياسر. Right? So how do the Hanafis understand this hadith? Allahu a'lam. Maybe Musa, you can research that for us, inshallah. Okay, so the next question is wujub al-istijmar. Notice how I'm saying it. Wujub al-istijmar. Listijmar, not wujubul istijmar. Right? So cleaning oneself when going to the bathroom. Right? It's called al-istitaba, it's called al-istinja, and it's called al-istijmar. Is it obligatory or is it not? And again, this is an issue about dabt of the madhahib. Again, one of the key things is when at tamadhub is الضبط والانضباط. What are you saying, and how do you work? Right? So here it says, according to the Hanafis, it is sunnah to clean it to wipe yourself when you go to the bathroom. And according to the Malikis, they debate. So just something that's useful to me as somebody who tries to solve problems for people. The Malikis, they have two opinions on somebody who prays with najasa on them. Right? So do they have to repeat the prayer or do they not? It's debated. However, the Malikis say that doesn't mean this kind of najasa from your private parts. So I didn't know that. So I'm trying to give somebody a fatwa, say, oh, don't worry, in the past you didn't clean yourself. And it's like, no, it's an issue. Right? So dabt al-madhahib, what are you actually saying? The only place where we get dabt wal-indibat, the only place where we have a precision of what is being said and a provision and a precision of how our modus operandi, how we function, and how we research, and how we do ijtihad is in a madhab. It doesn't exist outside of madhab. There is no dabt wal indibat outside of madhab. It's just chaos, right? So here it says it's mustahab, right? Why would it be mustahab? Because basically when you go to the bathroom and just wipe, you're not removing filth. So therefore you didn't do anything, right? So therefore it's not obligatory, right? Just like when the Prophet ﷺ said, when you wake up, wash your hands 3 times, right? So we say, the Shafis would say, how do you know it's not obligatory? Well, because the default is your hand is pure, and therefore you didn't really do anything. It's just kind of something extra, right? So we're assuming that the Prophet ﷺ is telling us to do something just kind of extra, right? So it's the same thing for the Hanafis here. Clearly, you're not removing any filth because you just wiped it. So therefore, it's not obligatory to begin with, right? واختلف المالكية, right? So the Shafis would say it's obligatory, right? So that this takhfif, even though it's not achieving anything, it is obligatory. It says Abdul Aziz ibn Hazim, right? This is the madar of the hadith. عن أبيه عن مسلم بن قرط عن عروة بن زبير عن عائشة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا ذهب أحدكم لحاجته فليستطب ب3 أحجار فإنها تجزئه. تابعه يعقوب بن عبد الرحمن عن أبي حازم. Right here, this one here. So Abdul Aziz ibn Abi Hazim. So the madar then is Abu Hazim from Muslim ibn Qart from Urwa. Right. أخرجه دال سين. What's دال سين? أديبا. So what is دال سين؟ موسى. Okay, no worries. So
Ah,
Dal is Abu Dawood and Sin is Nasa'i. Okay, so أخرجه Abu Dawood والنسائي. So we're going to see this frequently. Okay, so we have uh, meme for Muslim. Okay, no worries. So meme for Muslim. Qaf for Al-Qazwini, which is Ibn Majah. We have Ba for Bukhari. And we have um, meme for Muslim. And then we have Ta for Tirmidhi. Dal for Abu Dawood. Sin for Nasa'i. So they're all pretty obvious um, apart from Sin and Qaf, right? Sin for Nasa'i and Qaf for Ibn Majah because it's Al-Qazwini, right? وصححه الدارقطني. And he says زمعة بن صالح عن سلمة بن وهرام عن طاووس مرسلا. Right, so this is the student of Ibn Abbas narrating from Ibn Abbas, and Ibn Abbas is young, and his students are young. So the gap between Taus and the Prophet ﷺ is not one person, most likely. It is two people, right? So even Ibn Abbas, most of his hadith are marasil to begin with, right? So Ibn Abbas was 13 when the Prophet passed away. So most of his hadiths are hadith that he heard from other Sahaba, not from hadith that he heard himself. About 25 of his whatever 2,000, 3,000 hadiths are that he heard, right? Um, and she says زمعة بن صالح عن سلمة بن وهرام عن طاووس مرسلا. So that mursal to begin with, there's a gap here in the chain. So it could be from Ibn Abbas, from a Sahabi, or it could be, we don't know, right? طاووس. إذا قضى أحدكم حاجته فليستنجي, right? Command. بثلاثة أعواد, sticks. أو ثلاثة أحجار, stones. أو ثلاثة حثيات, uh, scoops or throws. حثى يحثو, to throw. من تراب, of stone, of earth, right? So imagine the earth is bits of earth, dry earth, for example. And he says, زَمْعَةُ فِيهِ لين. So he's weak, and then the hadith is mursal to begin with. ورواه ابن عيينة عن سلمة عن طاووس قوله, as his own words. Right? That is actually the words of طاووس, not mursal. ورواه كذاب عن طاووس. So I don't know which كذاب this is. عن طاووس عن ابن عباس مرفوعا. Right? A مرفوع hadith. And then he mentions another chain. So I don't know what the source for this. Where is this hadith anyway? So he's mentioning, presumably it's in Daraqutni, I don't know. أو ثلاث حثيات من تراب. Where is this hadith? Presumably it's in Daraqutni. أو ثلاث حثيات. So the editor should have mentioned it. I've noticed sometimes the editor doesn't mention the sources. Okay, so this is mentions it in This is عيون المسائل by Ibn Qassar. دارقطني. شنو دارقطني؟ شنو دارقطني. And this hadith is متفق على البخاري مسلم. الأعمش, the مدارس الأعمش عن مجاهد. This is an issue here because Al-A'mash rarely narrates directly from Mujahid. Okay? Rarely. There's only about 10 hadith or something like that that A'mash narrates directly from Mujahid. So Al-A'mash is a mudallis, right? He will narrate in a way that seems connected when it's not actually connected. And it says عن مجاهد عن طاووس عن ابن عباس and the Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم. Right? So here we don't have time to look into it now. The fact that it's in Bukhari and Muslim means that Bukhari and Muslim have sufficient evidence that this hadith is actually of what Al-A'mash narrates and said, حدثنا Mujahid. Otherwise, you actually have a gap in the chain. Like the hadith, كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب أو عابر السبيل. It comes in Bukhari, it comes with it says Al-A'mash حدثنا or أخبرنا Mujahid. But everybody else narrates it as an, and everybody else says hadith is actually has a problem. It's Al-A'mash from Layth ibn Abi Sulaym from Mujahid, and actually has a gap in the chain. Right? But anyway, the fact that it's in Bukhari Muslim tells us here's a problem or a principle, a problem in principle that Al-A'mash doesn't narrate usually directly from Mujahid, and narrates from various other people who aren't that amazing, and this hadith is actually sahih. Right? So it says here, Bukhari Muslim كلاهما عن طريق الأعمش. So it must be that, for example, Muslim narrates it from one particular way. Let's actually quickly look it up. الأعمش وأما الآخر فكان يمشي بالنميمة. Let's have a look at just to see how a Muslim mentions it because it's kind of useful. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about? So there's a potential problem in that Al-A'mash says an, and he's a mudallis, and so we need to prove that he actually is narrating from him. So asking the question, how did Muslim even do that? Notice this. Why is that relevant, Adib?
He may not have heard it from him.
Yeah, he actually heard it from him. He says, قال سمعت. Right, so A'mash said, I actually narrated it, I heard it from him. Right? So this is not, this is an exception. Often we're going to see al-A'mash an Mujahid, right? So it's a problem in that other places you will see him narrating the hadith, and he says an Mujahid, and you think that he's narrating the hadith directly from Mujahid, but he isn't. He's actually narrating it through somebody else, right? So here this is clear. So this is really important that I heard Mujahid say, narrating from Ta'us from Ibn Abbas, right? And there comes a hadith like that. There we go. However, we already knew that we didn't have to research it. We already knew that that potential problem was already removed because it's in Bukhari and Muslim. If it wasn't just in Bukhari or just Muslim, you could say, aha, maybe they're debating whether or not it's actually connected or not. Right? So the hadith, kun fi dunya ka'annaka gharibun aw 'abir as-sabil, I don't believe it's in Sahih Muslim. Aw 'abir as-sabil. Don't believe it's in Sahih Muslim. It is apparently in Muslim, but how? I don't think it's in Muslim. 1 second. It's in Bukhari, but not in Muslim. So AI apparently is saying it's in Bukhari and Muslim, but AI is not very reliable. Not in Bukhari. It's not in. So there we go. AI says it's in Bukhari and Muslim, but AI doesn't know what it's talking about. So this is AI overview. الحديث النبوي الشريف الذي سألت عنه هو كن في الدنيا كأنك غريب. هذا حديث الشريف رواه البخاري ومسلم. Really? What's your source? And its source says Bukhari. It does not say Bukhari and Muslim. Right. My point is it's not in Sahih Muslim. So when you see, oh, there's a potential error and it's only one of them. It may be the case that one of them is saying, yeah, this is a genuine issue, and the other one is not. It may be the case. Okie dokie, where do we get to? Here. Okay, and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam مر بقبرين فقال إنهما لا يعذبان وما يعذبان في كبير. And they're not for a big, so first for ta'leel here, some big issue, i.e. in their opinion. أما أحدهما فكان لا يستبرئ من بوله, right? He did not make sure that he had no urine on him. وأما الآخر فكان يمشي بالنميمة. So how is this a proof? Um, oh, okay, because if you didn't do anything, then you'd have urine on yourself, right? So the proof of then of Imam Abu Hanifa then, presumably assuming this is actually his opinion, is that well, you still have urine on you, don't you? So if you wipe yourself with toilet paper or with a leaf or a stone, you still have urine. So that small amount of urine that is excused after cleaning yourself is also overlooked if you don't clean yourself, because it's the same thing, right? صالح بن محمد الترمذي ساقط, right? This is a chain transmission. ساقط is totally unreliable. حدثنا القاسم بن عباد الترمذي حدثنا صالح ابن عبد الله الترمذي عن أبي عامر عن نوح بن أبي مريم. This is Nuh ibn Abi Maryam, the one who um, fabricated hadith, I believe, right? That he was asked, like, why did you fabricate hadith? He said, I saw the people want religious, people want, like, people busy with fiqh and they're busy with seerah, nobody's reading the Quran, right? This is Nuh ibn Abi Maryam. Where is this? Nuh ibn Abi Maryam. In Sir A'lam al-Nubala. I'm mixing him up with somebody else. So he's very, very weak, but I'm trying to make, is he the one that, I'm mixing him up with somebody else, perhaps? من وضع So this is the beginning of Tafsir al-Qurtubi. So he says, وَمِنْهُمْ جَمَاعَةٌ وَضَعُوا الْحَدِيث حِسْبَةً, out of, with a good intention, كما زعموا, as they claimed. يدعون الناس إلى فضاء الأعمال. So this is Abi Ismata, Nuh ibn Abi Maryam al-Marwazi from Maru, right, in Turkmenistan. ومحمد ibn Ukasha, الكرماني وأحمد بن عبد الله الجويبة I don't know how to pronounce it وغيرهم قيل لأبي عسمة so this is نوح بن أبي مريم من أين لك عن إكرمة عن ابن عباس في فضل سور القرآن سورة you have a chain transmission back to إكرمة to Ibn Abbas for every single surah قال إني رأيت الناس قد أعرضوا عن القرآن واشتغلوا بفقه أبي حنيفة ومغازي محمد بن إسحاق فوضعت هذا الحديث this category of hadith حسبة as an act of good deed. I had a good reason, right? People are they're not reading Quran. Right? So it's important now. So this is he, right? نوح ليس بثقة. قال ابن حبان هذا موضوع. This is fabricated. Right? So he says عن يزيد الهاشمي عن الزهري عن أبي سلمة عن so this is a classic chain here, just kind of fabricated it basically. مرفوعا الدم مقدار الدرهم يغسل وتعاد منه الصلاة. Right? So this is an exact rebuttal of the fatwa of Ibrahim al-Nakha'i, which is the Hanafi school, which is no, مقدار الدرهم is fine. Right? قال ابن حبان هذا موضوع is fabricated, it's just a made-up hadith. Right? You don't find this word مقدار الدم in dirham. So where do you find مقدار الدرهم? Let's just quickly look it up. Where are we going to find it? Is we're going to look in Musannif ibn Abi Shayba or Abd Razak San'ani, same thing, right? And we're going to put Miqdar al-Dirham, and you're going to find that from okay, put Dirham. Miqdar al-Dirham. So this is that, and the Hanafi school, where does it come from? It comes from the Salaf, it comes from Ibrahim al-Nakha'i and others. Miqdar al-Dirham. Basically, it is a hadith that's fabricated to rebuttal as a rebuttal of this. So here this is Abdul Razak al-Thawri from Hamad. Presumably Hamad ibn Abi Sulaiman, the Sheikh of Imam the Sheikh of Imam Abu Hanifa. إذا كان موضع الدرهم في ثوبك فأعيد الصلاة. أي it's an amount of blood najasa that is that or more. And so this is a different fatwa here from others. Give me 1 second. محمد أخبرنا from إبراهيم نخعي إذا كان الدم قدر الدرهم والبول وغيره فعد صلاتك وإن كان أقل من قدر درهم فامضي على صلاتك. Right? So this is what it is. It's the fatwa of Ibrahim al-Nakhai. Right? And so he's fabricating a hadith to disprove it, basically. Okay? So this is where the idea comes from. It's not a hadith at all. And so the hadith is narrated by somebody who is muttaham bil kadhib, we already think that he's going to fabricate a hadith, or he clearly has fabricated a hadith. And then the concept is clearly off. The Prophet never spoke about these terms anyway. Qadr al-dirham, etc. That's from the Salaf, right? So we know that that's not part of the hadith, and the content is totally off. So the hadith is fabricated. Wallahu alam, right? And perhaps Adib, if you have time, you can look in Al-Majruhin by Ibn Hibban and see what he says about this. Go to Majruhin by Ibn Hibban and look in Dirham, something like that, and try and find that hadith, and you can see what Ibn Hibban.
Okay. Inshallah.
Inshallah. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.